The gunshot that killed Marshall Harrison sent every nerve in Austin Young's body into a storm that wouldn't stop. And 3 years later, he still woke with his fists clenched so tight his knuckles bled against the wooden frame of whatever bed he found himself in that night. He rode from town to town across New Mexico territory in 1878, taking work where he could find it, never staying long enough for anyone to ask questions about the darkness that lived behind his eyes or the way his hands shook when the sun went down. The rage inside him was a living thing, fed by memories of his partner bleeding out in the dirt while Austin held him, too late, always too late, and the whiskey he drank every night only made the beast grow larger. White Oaks was supposed to be just another town, another few weeks of work before moving on, but Austin needed the money, and the gold mines were hiring men who could handle themselves. He rode in on a Tuesday morning with dust coating his dark hair and 3 days of stubble shadowing his jaw, leading a horse that had seen better days, and carrying a gun he knew too well. The main street stretched before him with wooden buildings on either side, a saloon, a general store, a church that looked newer than the rest, and people going about their business with the kind of ease that came from not knowing real darkness. Austin tied his horse outside the Silver Dollar Saloon and pushed through the doors, squinting as his eyes adjusted to the dim interior. A few men sat at tables, playing cards or nursing drinks, and behind the bar stood a woman who made him forget, just for a second, why he had walked in. She had auburn hair pulled back in a practical bun with wisps escaping around her face, and when she looked up at him, her eyes were the color of honey in sunlight. Something about the way she held herself, calm and steady, made the constant noise in his head quiet just a fraction. "Whiskey," Austin said, his voice rougher than he intended as he approached the bar. The woman reached for a bottle without breaking eye contact, and he noticed her hands moved with careful precision, no wasted motion. "You are new in town," she said, and it was a statement rather than a question. Her voice had a softness to it that seemed out of place in a saloon, just passing through. Austin took the glass she poured and downed it in one swallow, welcoming the burn. "Looking for work at the mines. Most men are." She did not pour him another without asking, just watched him with those steady eyes. "My name is Olivia Foster. I own this place." Austin had expected her to be a barmaid, maybe the owner's daughter, but not the owner herself. He reassessed her, noting the way the other men in the room glanced at her with respect rather than the usual leering he saw in most saloons. "Austin Young. You look like you have been riding hard, Austin Young." Olivia tilted her head slightly, and he had the uncomfortable sensation that she could see more than he wanted to show. "The boarding house is 2 doors down if you need a room. Mrs. Chen runs it, and she is fair with her prices." He nodded, dropping coins on the bar for the whiskey. As he turned to leave, his hand brushed against Olivia's where it rested on the polished wood, just the barest contact of skin against skin, and something happened that Austin could not explain. The constant tension that lived in his shoulders, the tightness in his chest that never eased, the raging storm in his mind, all of it settled like dust after rain. For 3 heartbeats, maybe 4, he felt what he thought might be peace, and it shocked him so thoroughly that he jerked his hand back as if burned. Olivia's eyes widened slightly, and he knew she had felt something too, though what it was he could not say. Austin left without another word, his heart pounding in a way that had nothing to do with danger, and everything to do with the terrifying realization that this woman had done something to him with a simple touch that 3 years of whiskey and distance had failed to accomplish. He found the boarding house and paid Mrs. Chen for a week, hauling his saddle and bags up to a small room with a bed, a chair, and a window that looked out over the street. Austin sat on the edge of the mattress and stared at his hands, trying to understand what had happened. He told himself it was nothing: exhaustion, hunger, the altitude, anything but what it had felt like, which was coming home after being lost for so long he had forgotten what home meant. The next morning, Austin rode out to the mines and signed on with a crew working one of the deeper shafts. The foreman, a man named Bill Garrett with a gray beard and calculating eyes, looked him over and seemed satisfied with what he saw. "You know how to use that gun?" Garrett asked, nodding at the Colt on Austin's hip. "I know," Austin said. "Good. We have had trouble with claim jumpers lately, and I need men who can work and fight if it comes to it." Garrett spat tobacco juice into the dirt. "You start tomorrow, dawn. Do not be late." Austin spent the rest of the day trying not to think about Olivia Foster and failing completely. He told himself he would stay away from the silver dollar, find somewhere else to drink. But when evening came and the sun painted the sky in shades of orange and red, he found his feet carrying him back to the saloon as if pulled by a rope he could not see. Olivia was behind the bar again, talking with a man in a fine suit who looked out of place among the miners and drifters. She glanced up when Austin entered, and her expression shifted in a way he could not read. The man in the suit said something that made her shake her head firmly, and there was tension in the set of her jaw that had not been there the day before. Austin took a seat at the far end of the bar, watching as the conversation continued. The suited man leaned closer, his voice too low for Austin to hear, but Olivia stepped back and crossed her arms. "I have given you my answer, Mr. Davidson. The silver dollar is not for sale." "Everything is for sale at the right price, Miss Foster." Davidson's smile did not reach his eyes. "You should think carefully about your position here. A woman alone, trying to run a business, it would be a shame if something were to happen." The rage that lived in Austin's chest, momentarily quieted, roared back to life. He stood and crossed to where they stood, moving into Davidson's space with deliberate intent. The lady said no. Davidson turned, his expression shifting from false charm to cold assessment. "This does not concern you, Cowboy. It does now." Austin kept his voice level, but his hand rested casually near his gun, a gesture that Davidson did not miss. For a long moment, the two men stared at each other, and Austin felt the familiar tightness in his muscles, the readiness for violence that had become second nature. Then Davidson smiled, sharp and humorless. "We will talk again, Miss Foster. Think about what I said." He left, and the tension in the room eased slightly. Austin turned to find Olivia watching him with an expression that mixed gratitude and something else, concern maybe, or wariness. "You did not have to do that," she said quietly. "I know." Austin returned to his seat, and this time when Olivia poured him whiskey, she poured one for herself as well. "Marcus Davidson owns half the businesses in White Oaks and wants to own the other half." Olivia's fingers traced the rim of her glass. "He has been pressuring me to sell for months now." "Why do you not?" Austin asked, then immediately regretted the question when he saw her expression harden. "Because this is mine. I built it from nothing after my father died, and I am not going to hand it over to a man like Davidson, just because he thinks a woman should not own property." Olivia drank her whiskey in one swallow, mirroring what he had done the day before, and Austin felt a flicker of admiration cut through the darkness in his chest. Fair enough. He studied her, noting the determined set of her shoulders and the fire in her eyes. "How long ago did your father die?" 3 years. Olivia's voice softened. "He was a good man, taught me everything about running this place. When he passed, everyone expected me to sell and move back east where I came from, but I could not do it. This town, this saloon, it is all I have left of him. 3 years. the same amount of time Austin had been running, and he wondered if grief was what he saw beneath her calm surface, a mirror of his own loss. "I am sorry," he said, and meant it. Olivia looked at him then, really looked, and Austin felt exposed under that gaze. "What are you running from, Austin Young?" The question hit like a physical blow, and he almost stood and walked out. Instead, he found himself answering, the words coming without permission. "I was a deputy marshal. My partner was killed 3 years ago, shot in the back by a man we were trying to bring in. I held him while he died, and I have not felt right since." He had never told anyone that, not in 3 years of drifting, but something about Olivia made the words come. She did not offer platitudes or empty sympathy, just nodded slowly. "That kind of pain does not go away easy. It does not go away at all," Austin said. "I keep moving because standing still makes it worse. Maybe you have been moving in the wrong direction." Olivia poured them both another drink. Sometimes the only way through pain is straight ahead, not around. Before Austin could respond, the door burst open and 2 men stumbled in, their voices loud and their movements unsteady with drink. Olivia's expression shifted to professional courtesy, and she moved to serve them, leaving Austin alone with his thoughts, and the strange, unsettling feeling that something fundamental had shifted in his world. He returned to the silver dollar every evening after that first night, telling himself it was convenient, that the whiskey was good, that he liked the atmosphere. The truth, which he barely admitted even to himself, was that being near Olivia quieted the storm inside him in a way nothing else had. They talked while she worked, conversations that ranged from the trivial to the profound, and Austin found himself sharing pieces of his past he had thought buried forever. Olivia told him about growing up in Boston, about how her mother had died when she was young, and her father had brought her west looking for a fresh start. She spoke of learning to read men's intentions quickly, of defending her right to own the saloon against those who thought women belonged in homes rather than businesses. There was steel beneath her soft exterior, and Austin respected that more than he could say. 10 days after arriving in White Oaks, Austin was leaving the mines when he heard shouting from the direction of town. He spurred his horse forward and arrived to find smoke rising from the silver dollar, flames visible through the windows. Without thinking, he dismounted and ran toward the building where a crowd had gathered. "Olivia," he shouted, pushing through the people. "She is still inside," someone yelled. "The door is jammed." Austin did not hesitate. He kicked the door with all his strength, once, twice, and on the third attempt it gave way. Smoke poured out, thick and choking, and he pulled his bandana over his nose and mouth before plunging into the inferno. "Olivia, where are you?" "Here." Her voice came from somewhere to his left, strained and frightened. Austin followed the sound, his eyes watering, his lungs burning, until he found her kneeling behind the bar, trapped by a fallen beam. He grabbed the beam and heaved, adrenaline lending him strength, and it shifted just enough for Olivia to crawl free. "Can you walk?" Austin asked, and when she nodded, he took her arm and guided her toward the door. They stumbled out into the fresh air, both coughing, and hands reached out to help them move away from the burning building. Austin watched, his arm still around Olivia, as the townspeople formed a bucket brigade, fighting to save the silver dollar. "It was Davidson," Olivia said, her voice hoarse. "I saw one of his men near the back door just before the fire started." White-hot rage flooded through Austin, the same rage that had consumed him for 3 years, but this time it had direction and purpose. "Where does he live?" "No." Olivia grabbed his arm, and the moment her hand touched his skin, the anger drained away like water through a sieve. Austin stared at her, shocked again by the effect of her touch. She held his gaze, her honey-colored eyes fierce despite the soot on her face. "Do not do something you will regret. We will handle this the right way." "The right way" did not stop him from trying to kill you, Austin said, but the words lacked the heat they should have carried. Her hand on his arm kept the beast inside him leashed. "I am all right. You got me out." Olivia's voice softened. "Thank you for that, Austin. You saved my life." The townspeople managed to contain the fire before it spread to other buildings, but the silver dollar was badly damaged. The bar itself was mostly intact, as was part of the main room, but the back area where Olivia had her private quarters was destroyed. That night, Mrs. Chen offered her a room at the boarding house, and Austin found himself unable to sleep, knowing Olivia was just down the hall. The next morning, he went to find Sheriff Tom Bradford, a man in his 50s with a reputation for fairness. Austin told him what Olivia had seen, and Bradford's expression grew grim. "Davidson is a problem, has been for a while now. But seeing someone near a building and proving arson are two different things. So you are just going to let him get away with it?" Austin felt the anger rising again, the familiar companion of the last 3 years. "I did not say that." Bradford leaned back in his chair. "I said proving it is hard, but I will investigate, talk to people, see what I can find out. In the meantime, you might want to keep an eye on Miss Foster. If Davidson is escalating, she could be in danger." Austin did exactly that, appointing himself Olivia's unofficial guardian despite her protests. He helped her salvage what could be saved from the saloon, worked with the local carpenter to plan repairs, and stayed close whenever she ventured out. Olivia accepted his presence with a mixture of exasperation and something that might have been affection, and Austin found that being useful, having a purpose beyond running, eased the constant ache in his chest. 2 weeks after the fire, Olivia touched his arm while they were sorting through damaged chairs, trying to determine what could be fixed. "Why do you think it happens?" she asked quietly. "Why does what happen?" Austin set down the chair he was examining. "This." Olivia kept her hand on his arm, and he felt the now familiar sensation of peace washing over him. "When I touch you, something changes. I can feel it. The tension you carry, it goes away." Austin had been trying not to think about it, had told himself it was imagination or coincidence, but he could not lie to her or to himself anymore. "I do not know, but you are right. When you touch me, the rage that has been eating me alive for 3 years just stops. I have never felt anything like it. Does it scare you?" Olivia's eyes searched his face. "Terrifies me," Austin admitted, "because I do not understand it, and I do not know what happens if I start depending on it on you." Olivia was quiet for a long moment, her hand still resting on his arm. "I think about you all the time, Austin Young. From the first day you walked into my saloon, you have been on my mind, and when you touch me, I feel safe in a way I have not felt since my father died. Maybe we are supposed to help each other." Austin covered her hand with his, and the peace that flooded through him was so profound it almost brought him to his knees. "I am not good for you, Olivia. I am broken in ways I do not think can be fixed. Everyone is broken in some way." Olivia stepped closer, and Austin could smell the faint scent of lavender that clung to her despite the smoke damage. Maybe broken pieces can fit together and make something whole. He wanted to kiss her more than he had wanted anything in years, but the sound of footsteps outside made them step apart. Bill Garrett appeared in the doorway, his expression troubled. "Austin, we have a problem at the mine. There has been a cave-in and men are trapped." Austin was moving before Garrett finished speaking, Olivia forgotten in the urgency of the moment. He ran to get his horse and rode hard toward the mines, where chaos had erupted. Men shouted and ran in different directions, and the mine entrance was partially collapsed, massive timbers broken like matchsticks. "How many are inside?" Austin demanded. "5 that we know of," Garrett said. "Maybe more. We need to shore up the entrance before we can go in, or the whole thing will come down." Austin dismayed and joined the crew working to stabilize the entrance, moving rocks and positioning new timbers under the direction of an older miner who knew the shaft structure. Hours passed in grueling labor, and the sun was setting by the time they finally cleared a path large enough to enter. Austin volunteered to go in with the rescue team, crawling through the narrow opening with a lantern in one hand and a rope tied around his waist. The darkness inside was absolute beyond the circle of his lantern light, and the air tasted of dust and fear. They found the first 2 men 20 feet in, bruised and shaken but alive, and sent them back toward the entrance. Deeper in the shaft, they discovered 3 more miners trapped behind a wall of rubble. Austin and the others worked to clear a path, their muscles screaming, aware that every moment the mine could collapse further and bury them all. "I can see them," one of the rescuers shouted, and they redoubled their efforts. Finally, they pulled the last man free, and the entire group made their way back to the surface, where cheers erupted from the waiting crowd. Austin emerged into the night air, covered in dust and exhausted, to find Olivia standing near the mine entrance with a look of such profound relief on her face that his heart clenched. She ran to him and threw her arms around him, not caring about the dirt or the watching eyes. Austin held her, burying his face in her hair, and felt the last of his resistance crumble. He was in love with Olivia Foster, had probably been falling since that first moment at the bar, and the realization was both terrifying and liberating. "I was so worried," Olivia said against his chest. "When I heard about the cave-in and that you went inside, I could not stop thinking about what would happen if you did not come back." "I came back," Austin said, pulling away just enough to look at her. "I had a reason to." The ride back to town was quiet. Austin and Olivia on his horse with her seated in front of him, her back pressed against his chest. Neither spoke, but Austin felt more at peace than he had in 3 years, despite the exhaustion and the lingering danger of the day. When they reached the boarding house, he helped her down and then dismounted himself, tying his horse to the rail. "Come inside," Olivia said. "You need to clean up, and I need to make sure you are not hurt." In her room, Olivia poured water from a pitcher into a basin and handed Austin a cloth. He washed the dust from his face and hands while she watched, and when he finished, she took the cloth from him and gently cleaned a cut on his forehead he had not noticed. Her touch was feather-light, and Austin closed his eyes, savoring the peace that radiated from her. "I am falling in love with you," Olivia said softly. "I know it is fast, and I know you are not planning to stay, but I cannot help how I feel." Austin opened his eyes and found her watching him with a vulnerability that matched his own. "I am already in love with you. I think I have been since the first time you touched me and made the pain stop." He cupped her face in his hands, his thumbs brushing her cheekbones. "But I do not know how to be the man you deserve. I am still carrying too much darkness. Then let me help you carry it." Olivia covered his hands with hers. "You do not have to do it alone anymore, Austin. That is what love means." He kissed her then, a gentle press of lips that quickly deepened as 3 years of loneliness and pain found their counterpoint in this woman who somehow calmed his storms. Olivia kissed him back with matching intensity, her hands tangling in his hair, and Austin felt something inside him shift and settle, like a bone finally set after being broken for too long. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Olivia rested her forehead against his. "Stay with me tonight. I do not want to be alone, and I do not think you do either." Austin stayed, and they lay together on her narrow bed, fully clothed but wrapped in each other's arms. They talked in whispers about everything and nothing, and Austin found himself sharing memories of his partner, Marshall Harrison, that he had not spoken aloud since the man's death. Olivia listened without judgment, her hand resting over his heart, and the pain of those memories was somehow bearable with her beside him. The next morning, Sheriff Bradford came to the boarding house with news. "I found evidence that Davidson hired men to set the fire at the Silver Dollar. One of them got drunk at a saloon in Carrizozo and bragged about it. I have a witness statement and enough to bring Davidson in." "Will it stick?" Olivia asked, her hand finding Austin's automatically. "I believe so. The witness is credible, and with your testimony about seeing one of Davidson's men near the building, we have a solid case." Bradford's expression was satisfied. "He will face trial, and even if he manages to avoid prison, his reputation in this town is finished." The trial took place 3 weeks later, and Davidson was convicted of arson and attempted murder. He received 10 years in the territorial prison, and his business holdings were sold to pay restitution to Olivia for the damage to the Silver Dollar. Austin sat in the courtroom gallery throughout the proceedings, watching Olivia testify with quiet strength, and felt pride swell in his chest. With the insurance money and Davidson's restitution, Olivia was able to not only repair the Silver Dollar but expand it. Austin helped with the construction, discovering he had a knack for carpentry he had not known about. The physical labor was satisfying in a way his martial work had never been, and coming home each evening to Olivia, dusty and tired but content, felt like building something real for the first time in his life. 4 months after the fire, on a cool evening in October when the aspens on the mountains had turned gold, Austin asked Olivia to take a walk with him. They strolled down the main street of White Oaks as the sun set, painting the sky in shades of amber and rose, and Austin felt his heart pounding with nervous anticipation. "I have been thinking," he said as they reached the edge of town, where the buildings gave way to open land, "about staying here permanently." Olivia looked up at him, hope flickering in her eyes. "What changed your mind?" "You did." Austin stopped walking and turned to face her, taking both her hands in his. "For 3 years, I have been running from the pain of losing my partner, convinced that if I kept moving, I could somehow leave it behind. But it followed me everywhere until I met you. You are the woman who can calm me with a touch, Olivia. I have never felt peace like that before, not in my entire life. And I realized that what I have been looking for all this time is not escape. It is a reason to stop running." Tears welled in Olivia's eyes, and she squeezed his hands. "I want you to stay more than anything." "I have one more question." Austin released one of her hands to reach into his pocket, pulling out a simple gold ring he had bought from the jeweler in town. "Olivia Foster, will you marry me? I know I am still healing and I know I am not perfect, but I promise to love you with everything I have for as long as I live." "Yes," Olivia said without hesitation, laughing and crying at the same time. "Yes, I will marry you, Austin Young." He slipped the ring onto her finger and kissed her under the darkening sky, feeling a joy so pure it almost hurt. The rage that had consumed him for 3 years was gone, replaced by something he had thought lost forever: hope for the future, purpose, and the deep, abiding love of a woman who saw his darkness and chose to stand beside him anyway. They married in the church in White Oaks on a Sunday morning in November, with most of the town in attendance. Mrs. Chen cried during the ceremony, and Bill Garrett served as Austin's best man, a friendship forged in the depths of the mind becoming something lasting. Olivia wore a dress of cream-colored silk that had belonged to her mother, altered to fit by the seamstress in town. And when Austin saw her walking down the aisle, he knew with absolute certainty that every painful step of the last 3 years had led him exactly where he was supposed to be. The silver dollar thrived under Olivia's management, becoming the social heart of White Oaks. Austin left his job at the mine and became his wife's business partner, handling the financial aspects and security, while Olivia managed the day-to-day operations. They worked together with an ease that surprised them both, anticipating each other's needs and building something that was truly theirs. But more than the business, it was their private moments that Austin treasured most. Every evening, when the saloon closed and they retired to the quarters above it that they had rebuilt together, Olivia would take his hand, and the peace that flooded through him was as powerful as that first accidental touch. The nightmares that had plagued him for years grew less frequent, replaced by dreams of the future they were building together. In the spring of 1879, Olivia told Austin she was pregnant. He reacted with a mixture of joy and terror, worried that he would somehow fail as a father the way he had failed his partner. Olivia listened to his fears with patience and then took his hand, grounding him with her touch. "You are not the same man who rode into town last year, Austin. You have healed, and you are going to be a wonderful father." Their son was born in December of that year, arriving during the first snowfall of the season. They named him Harrison, after Austin's fallen partner, and Austin held the tiny, squalling infant with tears streaming down his face. "Thank you," he said to Olivia, who looked exhausted but radiant. "Thank you for giving me this, for giving me everything." "You gave me just as much," Olivia said, reaching for his hand. "We saved each other, Austin. That is what love does." Harrison was a healthy, curious child who inherited his mother's honey-colored eyes and his father's dark hair. Austin proved to be a devoted father, patient and gentle in ways he had not known he possessed. He taught his son to ride, to respect the land, and to treat everyone with fairness, lessons learned through hard experience. Watching Harrison grow, Austin felt the last shadows of his past pain finally release their hold. 2 years after Harrison's birth, Olivia gave birth to twin girls they named Rose and Lily. The babies filled their home above the silver dollar with noise and chaos, and Austin would not have traded it for anything. He had gone from being a man who could not find peace anywhere to being surrounded by more love than he had thought possible. And the transformation was nothing short of miraculous. On a warm summer evening in 1883, when Harrison was 3, and the twins were toddling around causing mischief, Austin and Olivia sat on the porch of the small house they had built just outside town. The silver dollar was still theirs, but they had hired a manager to run it so they could focus on their growing family. Austin held Rose in his lap while Lily climbed over Olivia, and Harrison played with a wooden horse Austin had carved for him. "You ever think about going back?" Olivia asked, her voice quiet. "To martial work, I mean." Austin considered the question, watching Harrison gallop his toy horse across the porch boards. "No," he said finally. "That part of my life is over. I did it for years, and it cost me more than I realized. This, our family, the life we have built, this is what I was meant for all along. No regrets." Olivia's eyes searched his face. "Not a single one." Austin reached over and took her free hand, feeling the familiar peace settle over him. "You saved me, Olivia. I was drowning in rage and pain when I came to White Oaks, and you pulled me out of it. You are the woman who can calm me with a touch, and I have never felt peace like that before. Every good thing in my life started the day I walked into the silver dollar." Olivia smiled, that beautiful smile that had captivated him from the first moment. "I love you, Austin Young." "I love you too," Austin said, and meant it with every fiber of his being. The years passed with the steady rhythm of a life well lived. Austin and Olivia watched their children grow, celebrated birthdays and holidays, weathered the occasional crisis with the partnership they had forged. Harrison grew into a thoughtful young man who wanted to study law, a goal his parents supported wholeheartedly. The twins were inseparable, two halves of a whole, and brought laughter into every room they entered. White oaks continued to grow around them, the gold mines playing out eventually, but the town finding new industries to sustain itself. Austin became a respected member of the community, serving on the town council and helping to establish a school. People who met him in his later years would never have guessed at the darkness he had once carried, the rage that had consumed him. Olivia's touch had healed wounds he had thought permanent, and her love had given him a reason to become the man he was meant to be. On their 20th wedding anniversary in 1898, Austin and Olivia returned to the spot where he had proposed, now marked by a bench they had donated to the town. Their children were grown, Harrison practicing law in Santa Fe, the twins married to good men and starting families of their own. Austin held Olivia's hand as they sat, watching the sunset paint the sky in familiar shades of gold and rose. "Do you remember what you said to me the night of the cave-in?" Olivia asked, leaning against his shoulder. "I said a lot of things that night." Austin smiled, pressing a kiss to her hair. "You said you came back because you had a reason to." Olivia tilted her face up to look at him. "I was your reason." "You have been my reason for everything since that day," Austin said. "Every morning I wake up next to you, every time you take my hand and the world makes sense again, every moment of this life we have built, it is all because of you. You saw past the broken man I was and believed I could be more. You were never broken, Austin. You were wounded, and there is a difference." Olivia's eyes shone with emotion. "Wounds heal, especially when you have someone to help tend them. We healed each other." Austin knew she was right. The rage that had defined him for those 3 years before White Oaks was a distant memory now, replaced by a deep contentment he had never imagined possible. He still thought of Marshall Harrison sometimes, still carried the sorrow of that loss, but it no longer consumed him. Olivia had taught him that honoring the dead meant living fully, not drowning in grief. They sat on that bench until the stars came out, holding hands and talking about their children, their grandchildren on the way, the journey that had brought them from 2 wounded souls to this place of profound connection. When they finally walked back toward town, Austin felt the same peace he had felt that first time Olivia touched his arm in the Silver Dollar, a peace that had become as natural as breathing. In the autumn of 1899, when the new century loomed on the horizon, Austin and Olivia celebrated the birth of their first grandchild, a boy Harrison and his wife named Austin in his honor. Holding the infant, feeling the tiny fingers curl around his thumb, Austin was overwhelmed by gratitude for the life he had been given. He looked at Olivia across the room, talking with Harrison's wife, and caught her eye. She smiled, and he felt his heart swell with love that had only deepened over the years. That night, in the house they had shared for 2 decades, Austin pulled Olivia into his arms and held her close. "I was thinking about the day I rode into White Oaks," he said. "How lost I was, how angry, how certain I would never feel anything but pain again. And now," Olivia's hand rested over his heart, her touch still capable of centering him completely. "Now I cannot imagine being anywhere else or being with anyone else. You are my peace, Olivia. You always have been, from that very first touch." Austin kissed her softly, pouring 20 years of love and devotion into the gesture. "Thank you for not giving up on me, for seeing something worth saving in a broken-down cowboy who did not even know he needed saving." "You saved me too," Olivia reminded him. From Davidson, from loneliness, from a life half lived. We were meant to find each other, Austin. I believe that with my whole heart. Austin believed it too. The path that had led him to White Oaks had been dark and painful, marked by loss and rage, but it had brought him to Olivia, and that made every moment of suffering worthwhile. She was the woman who could calm him with a touch, who had shown him that peace was possible even after unimaginable pain, and loving her was the greatest achievement of his life. As the years continued to unfold, Austin and Olivia remained each other's anchor, growing old together with grace and humor. They watched their grandchildren grow, welcomed great-grandchildren, saw White Oaks transform from a rough mining town into a proper community. Through it all, the connection between them never weakened, that inexplicable magic that happened when skin touched skin and souls recognized each other. In the spring of 1910, when Austin was 62 and Olivia 60, they sat on the porch of their home and watched the sunset together, as they had done thousands of times before. Austin's hair was silver now, and Olivia's auburn had faded to a soft gray, but the love between them burned as bright as ever. He held her hand, feeling the familiar peace wash over him, and marveled at how this simple touch still had the power to center his entire world. "Do you think anyone else experiences this?" Olivia asked, echoing a question she had posed years before. "This feeling when we touch? I do not know," Austin admitted. "But even if they do, I cannot imagine it being more powerful than what we have. You are my miracle, Olivia. The woman who saved me from myself. And you are mine." Olivia leaned her head on his shoulder. "I love you, Austin Young. I have loved you since the day you walked into my saloon looking like the weight of the world was on your shoulders, and I will love you until my last breath and beyond." "I love you too," Austin said, the words as true and necessary as they had been the first time he spoke them. "You are the best thing that ever happened to me, my peace, my home, my everything." They sat together as darkness fell, two souls perfectly matched, bound by a love that had conquered pain, fear, and doubt. Austin thought about the young man he had been, riding into White Oaks with nothing but rage and whiskey to keep him company, and felt profound gratitude for the journey that had brought him here. Olivia had given him everything: peace, purpose, family, and a love so deep it had healed wounds he thought permanent. The silver dollar still stood on the main street of White Oaks, now run by their grandson with the same care Olivia had always shown. Sometimes Austin and Olivia walked past it, remembering the early days, the fire, the trial, all the challenges they had overcome together. It was a monument to what they had built, not just a business but a legacy of love and partnership that would outlast them both. As the years advanced and their bodies grew frailer, Austin and Olivia's connection only strengthened. When Olivia developed a persistent cough in the winter of 1914, Austin tended to her with gentle devotion, holding her hand through the worst of it. The touch that had once calmed his rage now seemed to speed her healing, or perhaps it was simply that his presence gave her a reason to fight. Either way, she recovered, and they celebrated with quiet gratitude. In the summer of 1918, on a warm afternoon when the sky was impossibly blue, Austin and Olivia sat in their garden surrounded by roses Olivia had planted decades before. Their great-grandchildren played nearby, laughter ringing through the air, and Austin felt complete in a way that still sometimes surprised him. He was 70 years old, Olivia 68, and they had built a life beyond his wildest imaginings. "Tell me again," Olivia said, her hand clasped in his, "about the first time we touched, what you felt." Austin smiled, happy to indulge her. "I felt peace for the first time in 3 years, like a storm that had been raging inside me suddenly went calm. I remember being shocked, almost afraid, because I did not understand how a simple touch could do that. And now, Olivia's eyes sparkled with the same intelligence and warmth they always had. Now I understand it was not the touch that changed me. It was you, your soul calling to mine, telling me it was safe to put down the burden I had been carrying. Austin raised her hand to his lips and kissed it gently. You are the woman who can calm me with a touch, Olivia Foster Young. You always have been and you always will be. I am glad I found you, Olivia said softly, or that you found me. However it happened, I am grateful for every day we have had together. As am I. Austin pulled her close, and they sat in contented silence, watching their descendants play, secure in the knowledge that the love they shared would echo through generations. They lived out their days in peace and contentment, surrounded by the family they had created and the community they had helped build. When Olivia passed quietly in her sleep in 1922 at the age of 72, with Austin holding her hand, he felt as though part of his soul had been torn away. The peace she brought with her touch was gone, and the grief threatened to overwhelm him in ways that echoed the rage of his youth. But Austin was not the same man he had been when he rode into White Oaks 44 years before. Olivia had taught him how to feel pain without being consumed by it, how to honor loss without letting it destroy him. He mourned her deeply, profoundly, but he did not let the grief turn to rage. Instead, he channeled it into love, spending time with his children and grandchildren, sharing stories of Olivia and keeping her memory alive. Harrison, now a successful lawyer with children and grandchildren of his own, came to sit with his father in the weeks after Olivia's death. "Tell me about when you met her," he asked. "I've heard the story before, but I want to hear it again." Austin settled back in his chair, a soft smile touching his weathered face. "I rode into White Oaks in 1878, angrier than any man had a right to be. I had lost my partner, my friend, and I was drowning in rage and guilt. I walked into the Silver Dollar looking for whiskey, and your mother was behind the bar. She looked at me, really looked, and I felt something shift. When she touched my hand by accident, the rage just stopped. I had never felt peace like that before. And you knew right away she was special?" Harrison asked. "I knew she was dangerous to the walls I had built around myself." Austin's eyes grew distant with memory. "But yes, I knew. It took me time to accept it, but from that first moment, some part of me recognized that she was my home. She calmed storms I did not know how to quiet on my own. She loved me when I did not know how to love myself. And she gave me everything, this family, this life, 43 years of happiness I never thought possible." Harrison took his father's hand, and Austin felt a faint echo of the peace Olivia had always brought. Perhaps it was in his blood now, passed down through his children, a legacy of the love that had healed him. "She loved you just as much, Dad. Anyone could see it." "I know," Austin said, his voice thick with emotion. "And that knowledge will carry me through whatever time I have left." Austin lived for another 3 years after Olivia's death, spending his final days surrounded by the family they had created together. He told stories of the old days, of the Wild West as it had been, of a town called White Oaks and a saloon called the Silver Dollar. But mostly he talked about Olivia, about the woman who had saved him with nothing more than a touch and a willingness to see past his anger to the hurting man beneath. On a cool October evening in 1925, Austin Young passed away peacefully in his sleep at the age of 77. His children and grandchildren gathered for the funeral, celebrating a life well lived and a love that had transcended the ordinary. They buried him next to Olivia under the cottonwood trees at the edge of town, and on the shared headstone Harrison arranged for a simple inscription: Austin and Olivia Young. She was the woman who could calm him with a touch. He was the man who learned to find peace. Together they built a legacy of love. The silver dollar operated for many more years, run by descendants who inherited not just a business but a story, a reminder that love could heal even the deepest wounds, that two broken people could come together and create something beautiful. The tale of Austin and Olivia became part of White Oak's history, passed down through generations, a testament to the power of connection and the magic that happened when two souls recognized each other. In the end, what mattered was not the rage Austin had carried or the losses both he and Olivia had suffered. What mattered was the moment their hands touched in a dusty saloon in 1878, when a cowboy who had never felt peace found it in the touch of a woman who understood his pain. What mattered was the life they built from that moment forward, the children they raised, the love they shared, and the way they proved that healing was always possible when you found the right person to walk beside you. Their great-great-grandchildren still tell the story, embellished perhaps by time and telling, but true in all the ways that matter. They speak of a cowboy and a saloon owner, of a touch that brought peace, of a love that conquered darkness. And somewhere in whatever comes after, Austin and Olivia Young are together still, her hand in his heart finally, eternally at rest.